The Sophists are thinkers who opened a new era in the history of philosophy and focused on humans. With them, philosophy turned from the sky to the earth, from the universe to humans. The Sophists directed philosophical inquiry from universal natural laws to daily life, to human thoughts and behaviors. For the Sophists, philosophy is an effort to understand man himself and social life, rather than dealing with abstract concepts. They overturn traditional ideas by questioning concepts such as justice, virtue, morality, right and wrong. In this way, they brought philosophy to the public and prepared the ground for discussions in which everyone could participate. According to the Sophists, concepts such as truth and falsehood are relative. In other words, whether something is right or wrong varies according to the value judgments and cultural context of that society. The Sophists focused on rhetoric, the art of effective speaking. According to them, a good speaker does not say what is true but what is convincing. The Sophists were the first philosophers to offer education for money. They taught young people how to live successful lives and how to give persuasive speeches. The 5th century BC in Greece was a very active period in intellectual and social terms, when a great transformation took place. During this period, philosophers questioned traditional ideas and turned the root of philosophy towards humans and society. Those who played the most important role in this transformation were the Sophists. Sophists is a term derived from the Greek word sophos, meaning wise. Although it initially meant a wise person, over time it came to mean a person who sells her knowledge for money. This situation is closely related to the conditions of the emergence of the Sophists. Conditions that shaped the emergence of the Sophists and the rise of Athens. In the 5th century BC, Athens experienced great economic, social and cultural development. As democracy has strengthened, the participation of free citizens in political life has increased. In order to be successful in the democratic system, effective speaking skills and persuasion were of great importance. The Sophists met this need by giving lessons to citizens on public speaking and politics. With the development of the judicial system in Athens, a good defense was necessary to be successful in the courts. Sophists assisted defense by advising them on legal matters and preparing effective speeches. With the rise of democracy, old aristocratic values began to be questioned. The Sophists presented a system of thought that reflected the new values that emerged in this period. The Sophists' areas of interest were quite broad. Sophists believed that laws were not of divine origin, but were a product of social contracts formed by people. This approach broke new ground in philosophy by questioning traditional beliefs. Sophists argued that values were not absolute and varied according to social and cultural contexts. They added a new dimension to philosophy by suggesting that concepts such as good, bad, beautiful and ugly are relative. Sophists placed great emphasis on the importance of education and learning. They focused on questions such as whether virtue can be taught and how different types of virtue can be acquired. Sophists also studied the structure, meaning and use of language. The Sophists were interested in topics such as how language shapes human thought and how language is used in different cultures. Sophists also put forward important views on issues such as politics and justice. They discussed the relationship of justice between the strong and the weak, the nature of the state, and what good governance should be like. According to the Sophists, knowledge is not something absolute and universal, but rather a relative and variable phenomenon. This view has brought a whole new dimension to the understanding of knowledge in the history of philosophy. According to the Sophists, knowledge varies from person to person, from culture to culture, and from time to time. Protagoras' famous statement, "Man is the measure of all things," is the clearest expression of this view. According to this statement, each individual interprets the world in different ways based on their own experiences and perceptions. Therefore, it is not possible to speak of an objective reality. Sophists give more importance to the senses than to reason. According to them, the best way to reach knowledge is to experience it through the senses. However, they do not ignore the fact that the senses can also be deceptive. Sophists do not believe in the existence of a universal and immutable truth. According to them, truth, like knowledge, is relative. Every society, every individual has their own truth. According to them, the important thing is not to find the truth, but to convince people. Therefore, even the concepts of right and wrong become relative. Sophists have deep doubts about the certainty and universality of knowledge. They can question any knowledge claim and offer a different perspective. Sophists deny the existence of absolute truths, arguing that all values and knowledge are relative. The Sophists were concerned with practical problems rather than theoretical matters. They focus on whether the information is useful or not. The Sophists brought philosophy to people's daily lives and social problems and thought deeply about language. For them, language is not only a means of communication, but also has an important role in shaping thought and knowledge. Language is a social contract. According to the Sophists, language emerged as a result of an agreement between people. The meanings of words depend on a social consensus, and communication is not possible without this consensus. For example, the word apple refers to the fruit on the tree because people agreed on this meaning. This approach shows that language is an arbitrary and cultural construct. Language shapes reality. Sophists believe that language not only reflects reality but also shapes it. The concepts in our language are abstractions that we create in our minds. These abstractions are shaped by our perceptions and can vary from person to person. Therefore, language determines the way we perceive reality. Language creates difficulties in communication. Sophists argue that language is not a perfect means of communication. The meanings of the words are not clear and precise. The same word can be used in different meanings by different people. This can lead to misunderstandings and disagreements in communication. According to the Sophists, language and meaning are relative. That is, the meaning of a word may change depending on the context and culture in which it is used. Sophists doubted that language could accurately reflect reality. According to them, language can be a curtain between us and reality. Sophists considered language to be a practical tool. The main purpose of language is to persuade people and communicate. Protagoras, advocate of relative knowledge. Protagoras lived between 490 and 420 BC and is considered one of the most important figures of ancient Greek philosophy. Protagoras, who is especially known for his saying, "Man is the measure of all things," is known for bringing the concept of relativity to philosophy. Now let's take a look at her life and impact. Protagoras comes from the city of Abdera in Thrace. She was educated by Democritus and later became a successful teacher herself. During his teaching career, he traveled to different regions, including Sicily, southern Italy and Greece, teaching philosophy courses. He lived a wealthy life and received high fees from his students. Protagoras served not only as a philosopher but also as a political advisor. He worked with important statesmen such as Pericles and prepared draft laws for newly established cities. At the center of Protagoras' philosophy is the concept of relativity. According to her, knowledge varies from person to person, and there is no objective reality. The saying, "Man is the measure of all things," is the clearest expression of this view. This statement expresses that each individual interprets the world in different ways, based on their own experiences and perceptions. Protagoras argues that the senses can be deceptive and that different people can have different sensory experiences. For example, temperature perception may vary depending on a person's physical state and previous experiences. According to Protagoras, truth, like knowledge, is relative. Every society, every individual has their own truth. It is not possible to speak of an absolute and universal truth. Additionally, Protagoras focused on rhetoric, the art of effective speaking. According to her, the important thing is not to find the truth, but to convince people. Protagoras' views were heavily criticized by other philosophers, especially Plato, who argued that Protagoras' relativist views undermined moral values and disrupted social order. Gorgias, a radical approach to existence, knowledge and communication. Gorgias was a sophist from the city of Leontino in Sicily who lived between 485 and 380 BC and was known as an influential orator. She is especially known for her famous thesis that nothing exists, and even if it existed, no one could know it, and even if they knew, they could not convey it to anyone. Gorgias was renowned as a powerful orator and is known to have dedicated a gold statue to the Temple of Delphi with the income from his speeches. Gorgias, who also appears in Plato's dialogue Gorgias, is known for his belief in the power of words. At the heart of Gorgias' philosophy is a radical doubt about existence, knowledge and communication. His three fundamental theses are: 1. There is nothing. Gorgias argues that nothing can exist based on logical contradictions. For something to exist, it must either be eternal or created. However, the eternal cannot have a place, and the created must exist before it exists, which is illogical. 2. Even if there is, no one can know. Gorgias argues that something cannot be known even if it exists. She argues that our sensory organs can be deceptive, and that each individual perceives the same object differently. Moreover, even if there is an entity that can be grasped through thought, it is not possible to fully grasp the nature of this entity. 3. Even if she knows, she cannot tell anyone. Gorgias argues that even if something is known, it will be passed on to others. Because language does not fully reflect reality and different people may use the same words with different meanings. Gorgias's philosophy has left deep traces in the history of philosophy. Gorgias seems to have led philosophy into a dead end, with his profound doubts about knowledge and being. Relativism. Gorgias denied the existence of a universal truth, arguing that knowledge is relative and that each individual creates his or her own reality. Gorgias argued that language may not accurately reflect reality and that communication can always be misleading. Gorgias's philosophy can be seen as negative and destructive. However, it has played an important role in the history of philosophy. By asking questions about knowledge and reality, Gorgias pushed the boundaries of philosophy and influenced later philosophers. Gorgias's philosophy points out some important points that are still valid today. The fact that even scientific knowledge is not absolute and is constantly evolving is consistent with Gorgias's views. Communication problems and misunderstandings between different cultures support Gorgias's doubts about language. Gorgias secured her place in the history of philosophy by asking radical questions about existence, knowledge and communication, and by pushing the boundaries of philosophy.